Welcome to the O Brother Podcast from your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
We're going back in time.
Going back in time. Mike, it's funny because Halloween Fest, of course, rolling on here at the O Brother Podcast.
This is the kickoff, isn't it?
It's the official kickoff in the sense that this is the first movie review that we're doing of Halloween Fest of 2023. Now, I went back into the O Brother archives and I was listening to the kickoff of Halloween Fest a few years ago. And what's interesting is we kicked that off in 2021 with John Carpenter's The Fog, which I had not seen at that point. Now, on today's episode, we're reviewing John Carpenter's Christine, which I also hadn't seen.
Well, I'm not surprised because it came out in '83 and you couldn't get in
I couldn't get in.
Rated R.
There was HBO and things like that, video rental, I mean, there was always things playing in the house that I shouldn't have been seeing that I could see.
And it wasn't a huge success in the theater.
Well, here's the interesting thing about Christine is Stephen King, who lives up in New Hampshire, by the way.
He's at every Red Sox
game. I've
game.
seen him and walked past him at many Red Sox games. Actually had better seats than him for a period of time. But he releases the novel Christine in 1983, and around April, 8 months later, we're getting the film from John Carpenter, which is pretty crazy.
And when the film came out, the release of the paperback coincided. So it couldn't have been better timing, but John Carpenter was on kind of a slump.
Well,
The Thing didn't do well with Kurt Russell.
And we're gonna do a review of The Thing on Halloween Fest this year too, because that's another one I have not seen. And as you said, Carpenter's coming off this slump. The Thing was just too much for people to handle at that particular time. Carpenter talks about in interviews, we're going through a recession at that time, kind of very depressed. And then here comes The Thing, very sort of gory, intense film, from what I've read, right? Because I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And also what else was out at the time competing with it in more of a feel-good state was E.T. From Steven Spielberg. So you're right. He was basically...
Did you get a chance to listen to the commentary?
No, but I did. There's quite a few extras on in my case, the digital. There's several featurettes, some deleted scenes and such. And then you can find a lot of stuff online too,
but,
of course.
In the commentary, it's John Carpenter and Keith Gordon who plays Arnie in the film. It's the two of them. It was 10 years old. The movie was 10 years old when they recorded it, and that was 10 years ago. So it's on its 30th anniversary, right? This
40th.
year? 40th anniversary.
40th. There, I had just seen a panel with a few of the actors at, I think it's Texas Frightmare or something, some con that they do in Texas, I believe. And I was watching there was one from 2003, and then fast forward, to just like a month ago, and they had it too. So, it's a testament to this film. It's just got it's got legs that it keeps going.
Right.
Like Energizer Bunny, just keeps
I think it's
going.
more popular now.
Yeah.
And I got the 4K, and here's the 4K.
What were you holding up? Is that what you were holding
That's
up?
the 4K.
Is that sealed? Oh, no.
It's a steel book.
Oh, that's nice.
And
unsleeve that. Let's see that.
Well, it's J card, so there's really not a sleeve.
I see. Yeah.
So,
okay.
I would suggest if you have it on Blu-ray, don't upgrade.
Okay.
There's no reason to upgrade.
I have to say,
really
no.
Not.
I just have the digital, but the transfer on the digital is really, really good.
And I think that's
and it's 4K.
Is it?
4K.
Okay.
It's 4K. Yeah.
So
we've said directed, of course, by John Carpenter, written by, adapted from the novel Stephen King. And then the screenplay was done by Bill Phillips, who's a Massachusetts native. He was from Brockton, actually. I don't know if you know that, but the novel will published in early 83, we mentioned. Now, Carpenter at this point already already had on his resume Escape from New York. He's got Halloween. He's got The Thing, The Fog, which we talked about, right? So
Right.
he's, he's got a string of,
And 3 out of 4 of them did well,
except for The Thing,
except for The Thing. That didn't
which
do so
now
well.
again, fast forward, now
Correct.
has developed its own cult
And it has a
following
remake.
and is actually much, better received by critics today than it was then as well. When they look back on it,
You mean
The th
Christine or
no,
The
The
Thing?
Thing. The
Okay.
Thing, yeah.
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 Both of them.
Same with Christine, yeah.
Yeah. Both of them
Let me run
are.
down. You mentioned, Keith Gordon. Let me run down kind of the main cast here, and then I'm gonna point out a few other things. You got Keith Gordon as Arnie Cunningham. And Keith Gordon, you might have seen in Jaws 2. He's in Dressed to Kill. He was also in All That Jazz. He with Roy Scheider. And most people might know him from Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Yes.
Aside from Christine, of course.
Yes.
John Stockwell plays Dennis. And John Stockwell was in Top Gun. He was in a film I love, Eddie and the Cruisers. Great film with Michael
He
Pare.
played like a jock, like a football
Yeah.
jock,
And
which he wasn't in real life.
That's right. And they were friends, in the film.
Yeah, in the film.
In the film, yeah.
It's interesting to listen to the commentary because Keith Gordon's very honest, and he says, we didn't bond or become friends over the movie. He said, I think there was a competitive aspect to it. And he's pretty open about it. Their on-screen dynamic was great.
Alexandra Paul, who plays
From
Lee,
Baywatch.
she hadn't been in much really at all up
This was
until
her first
point.
film.
This was really her first feature film. Yeah.
Mhm.
The great Robert Prosky, who plays Darnell, who owns this basically salvage yard and
Junk
this kind of
shop.
do-it-yourself garage, where Keith Gordon as Arnie goes and fixes up Christine.
But don't think about it too long. I'll throw you out your ass.
And the great Harry Dean
Stanton plays Junkins. He plays a cop, which, he's played a lot of bad characters. So probably a breath of fresh air for him to play a good guy.
Yeah.
Christine Belford is just fantastic as Arnie's mother, Regina.
Mhm.
She's a very typical 80s,
Yeah.
especially in the genre. She's just fantastic. But she's been in a number of high profile series too. If you look up her IMDb, Roberts Blossom, who plays LeBay, who is the guy that Arnie buys the car from.
What a great character.
What
actor.
a great cameo in this.
He's been in movies for like 50 years and he always looks the same.
He was in Escape from Alcatraz, one of the high points.
Yeah, that's right, with Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. William Ostrander or Ostrander.
Buddy
I think it's Ostrander. Buddy Repenton. This guy was so good, man. So good.
But, it's so funny. There's a sequence in the film where they're teasing, because he's a bully.
Yeah.
And he's teasing.
And he's one of these
Arnie.
guys that looks like he's 40.
Exactly.
In sophomore year.
The teacher
He's got the mutton chops and everything.
The teacher comes up to yell at him, and I'm looking at him and the teacher. I'm like, I bet he's older than that teacher.
But there's a great scene between him and the teacher. Like, the teacher doesn't take any shit from him at all.
Right.
He goes right after him, which is really funny because at first you think the teacher's just kind of a pushover, but it's a great scene there. But he was fantastic as Buddy. In fact, there's a scene very famous scene in the film where Buddy and his goons go to the Darnells.
Yes.
And they take some sledgehammers and knives and things to Christine. There's an image of Buddy on the top of the car. If you just pause it, it would make a beautiful poster on your wall. It is just John Carpenter at his best. He loves those wide kind of shots.
There's a lot of, we'll talk a lot about.
Talk about that, yeah. And then I made this one last note for you, especially. It's very hard to say this, but the late, great, wonderful Kelly Preston.
Oh, see, I didn't know if you were going to catch her or
was
not.
in this as Roseanne. Yeah, she's
right
in
at the very beginning.
In the beginning for a little bit, and just man,
and he looks past her, Kelly Preston, who's gorgeous.
Right.
He kind of like blows her off for Alexandra.
And Alexandra's a beautiful woman, but more of the kind of girl next door look.
Correct.
At that time.
But and Kelly Preston has blonde hair, which might throw some people because she normally has red hair.
I gotta say, I just put it out there at the front. I loved this movie. I can't believe it's taken me this long to see it. It's a Carpenter masterpiece
And,
visually.
when I think of, even though his name is in front of Christine, it's John Carpenter's Christine.
Mhm.
I'd never put it together that it was John Carpenter.
Until I brought it up,
To
right?
you you said, what about Christine?" And I was like, "Yeah, Stephen King. Okay, that fits."
Right.
But and then you said, "Yeah, it's John Carpenter." And I'm like, it's never on his greatest hits compilation. Um, and I just but as soon as the movie started and I hear that, that synthesizer,
Right, right,
I'm
and
like, "Of
that's
course
that
this is John
right, the
Carpenter."
music, the score is fantastic. I mean, first of all, there's a great soundtrack. I mean, the thing opens with at the time, was a huge hit, still is, George Thorogood and the Destroyers with Bad to the
Mhm.
Bone. But Carpenter's score is just fantastic,
Yeah.
and he ad libs most of it.
Yeah.
He goes off to a studio and spends 2, 3 weeks just kinda putting
Right.
synthesizer to the movie.
Right.
It's
And
phenomenal.
back then, he was probably using a Casio,
Good
like, I'm
good
not
reference.
so
But, that this isn't the first, to take an inanimate object, a car,
Mhm.
and make it this frightening and this
Mhm.
scary. This is something that a lot of horror movies with main characters like Michael Myers can't pull off,
Mhm.
let alone now it's not the first, of course, movie that has done this, right? You had one of my all-time favorites, I've mentioned it many times on the podcast
The
before, which is
car.
The Car from 1977. Ronnie Cox, the great Ronnie Cox. James Brolin was in it.
Mhm.
It's a great horror film. Matter of fact, Stephen King, I think one of the only films he's directed, Maximum Overdrive. Remember, was
Yeah.
like 1984, 85. I think that came out, and
With, Martin
wasn't that a
Sheen's
similar
kid.
the semi truck? Wasn't it
Yeah,
possessed or
Martin
something?
Sheen's kid, Emilio
Emilio
Estevez.
Estevez. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So, anyways, just
but
pointing out,
not nearly as good as Christine.
it's not. No, no. This
But
is.
Stephen King loves to crap on on his books that become movies. He
Mhm.
hated The Shining. And I've read the books, so I kind of see where he's coming from. It's not his vision, but some of the things he writes, you just can't pull off.
Yeah, he had gone to Kobritz with Cujo prior to this,
Yeah.
and Kobritz passed. He's like, "I just don't see this as a feature film," whatever, he passed on it. And they said, and they kept a relationship going, and if you develop something and I'll send it your way, and
Mhm.
here comes Christine, and then, thank God that Kobritz,
Yeah, he's
picked
on
up on this.
film. He's in the extras talking about that.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So, Arnie, of course, plays the typical sort of bumbling goofball
Now
nerd,
back in
type.
'83 when I saw this, and I saw it in the theater because I had read the book. I've read the book twice. I read the book when I was in Florida. I was gonna take the bar exam in Florida, and then, like, halfway through, I bailed out, said, I'm not gonna come back here." And I started reading. If you remember, I used to go to the library and come home with a stack of
This
novels,
was one of the ones you read?
and this was one of the ones I read back then. So,
Yeah,
and that was, I don't know, 97, I think,
right.
98, somewhere around there. But, the book and the movie, Christine's a main character
Mhm.
of this
Oh,
film,
yeah, without a doubt.
and the way John Carpenter shoots it, I think it is I'm
It's ge
watching it,
it's
and I'm like,
genius.
"I think this is better than Halloween."
I think the same thing.
God
And
forbid I
for
say
us, for
that.
me to say that,
And I got Michael right with
I
me.
mean, we both have it, which is just, but, yeah, it's just stunning right from the opening, and he's known for those wide shots, and,
Mhm.
a lot of ones and twos and things like that. The cinematography was great in this too. It's very well lit because, a lot of it
Mhm.
was in the dark, and but it 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 was right from the beginning. I was just hooked, and I
The
think it was like you said.
opening on showing what
The
It
factory?
wasn't, but yeah, showing this
Right.
factory in the old school way they used to build cars. Now it's all robots,
Yeah, so
but
you
there's
had guys
guys
underneath
underneath,
and right.
screwing stuff in and
Right, right, and what was beautiful is they shot it with, I think he said, like, Fuji film or something, which gives it that very
correct.
kind of vintage, kind of aged,
Right,
look.
only the beginning was
Just the beginning.
Fuji, and then the
Correct.
rest
Right.
of it was like, I don't know, Panasonic or something like that, that was more
Right.
well
Which
known.
is was
A
kinda his
Polaroid
go-to.
maybe, yeah.
Right. But you get this assembly line of all these white Plymouths,
Yeah,
right? And then all of a sudden, the
just
red
red
roll
stands
out
out.
just
Even
pops.
with the dull colors,
Mhm.
that red just comes through.
It was gorgeous. Yeah. Now this is a 1958 Plymouth Fury, which I guess the story is it was really the one of the only vehicles that really wasn't getting any love or attention in the
Right,
mainstream at that point. You had Mustangs and Camaros and whatever,
right,
Chevy.
right,
So this was one of the reasons that King decided to put it in the novel.
right,
And that's a really big part of the storyline, right? And the relationship between Arnie and Christine, because they're both kind of outcasts,
right, right.
right? Yeah.
And here's a big discrepancy or difference from the book. The book, the car is actually possessed by a person,
Yeah, the previous owner.
but in the movie, you tell right off the bat, John Carpenter, two guys on the assembly line, one gets his hand bitten, if I want to say that,
That's a good
because
way to put
the
it.
trunk
Yeah.
comes down on his hand.
Sure, sure,
And
yeah.
then there's another guy who flicks ash on the brand new seats.
Don't
And it's
disrespect Christine.
right. And they open the door and his body comes flopping out.
That's right.
So the car from the jump there's something evil about it.
There's something even about it now, and you might remember this from reading the novel, but and one which in hindsight a brilliant decision by Carpenter was that in the novel the sort of ghost, if you will, of the previous owner is in the back seat, kind of
Yes.
influencing Arnie when he's
Correct.
right. And so Carpenter
Correct.
said, "No, I don't think that's going to play well. It sounds kind of
Right.
goofy." So
Right.
now, having said that, is there's a point at which Arnie himself basically seems to become possessed.
Correct.
Perhaps only when he's in the car, right, driving it. But there was we are correct, right, in that up to a point it's just Christine. It's just the Christine's
Mhm.
supernatural possessive powers that right. It's
Right.
not Arnie in there for half the movie. It's really not
Right.
until the end that you see scenes of him in it when it's running loose on the streets,
But it's
killing people.
brilliant because John Carpenter blacks out the windows. So when
Yeah.
Christine is on a killing spree, let's say,
Right.
you can't tell, you have to use your imagine is Arnie in there?
Mhm.
Or is it the car? You don't he doesn't lay it out for you,
Right.
So I thought that was a great choice by Carpenter,
Which a tip of the hat, a major, props to Terry Leonard, I
who
think
did
was
the
the
stunt
primary stuntman. One
and
in particular where they built this gas station
yes,
for this scene, this very
it's a
intense
famous
scene
scene.
that leads to the death of Buddy, spoiler
Mhm.
alert, which is just a fantastic sequence, but Terry Leonard is in that car when it's lit on fire,
Yes.
when they first start rolling cameras and it backs out of the bay of the gas station,
Mhm.
the car dies.
The stalls
It
because of the
stalls out.
heat,
Right.
burns the
And he's
wires.
in there. I mean, it's
Yes.
like as he said, he's well protected, but I mean, I'm still in a car engulfed in flames.
Right, but and you look at that shot, it looks so smooth, but they had to cut to get him out of there
Right.
and get the car going again,
Yeah.
and then he's driving this flaming car, which is engulfed in flames, and he can't see a thing, and
No.
he's
Right.
speeding down the road,
Yeah.
keeps it straight as a wire. I mean, great stunt work.
Wonderful stunt work. Yeah. And now there was some talk about the rating in the movie, which is definitely a hard R.
Yes.
There's everything you could expect from an 80s horror film in this. Very offensive from obviously the typical sexual innuendo to
Right.
very crude language. There's slurs in this. It's
Yeah.
definitely dated in that respect,
Right.
for sure. But
And, it's interesting. I started to say it earlier, but I didn't like Keith Gordon when I first saw this. I had seen him in Jaws 2 and a couple of other things, and he always played the same nerd.
mm,
Like, have you seen Jaws 2? Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah,
So you've seen him in that.
oh yeah,
And
sure.
it's like Arnie is all of a sudden in Amityville, but I look back now and I'm
Well,
like,
except for the
"What
fact
a."
that Jaws 2 preceded
I know,
Christine, so,
I know.
you can't say that.
But I look at the performance now and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Brilliant. This is
It was
like
br it was
brilliant
brilliant. It
stuff
it
from a
really was, it really was.
teenager, basically."
And he
He had
had,
just got his license.
right, and had some stage background and things like that, but yeah, it's one you look at, like, they couldn't have cast it any better because the
Yeah,
the arc that he has to go through
right.
in about a 90-minute film, give or take, right? And it costs they of course overdo the goofy Arnie in the beginning. He's got the tape on the
Right.
glasses
In
and
the
all
the
of that sort of stuff.
trash, all
But
over
it
the
didn't
place.
feel it didn't feel rushed or forced. It seemed I bought into the
Mhm.
evolution of his character throughout
He
because then he
goes from
becomes a
that.
complete, kind of asshole,
Right,
tough
to
guy
where he's
type.
got his father in a chokehold,
Now that scene, okay.
which was
So Mike's
convincing.
Mike's talking about let's just say Arnie doesn't have the greatest relationship with his parents.
Right.
They don't want nothing to do with him getting a car, and he's not allowed to keep it at the house and all this stuff. And as I said, Christine Belford is just fantastic as his
Mhm.
mother.
Playing his mother.
But the guy that plays his father is really great too. And they
Mhm.
have this exchange that you're referring to just down from the stairwell in their house. And the father's like, "You've been disrespecting us for too long, and it's going to stop today, mister." And
And you
then
go in
Arnie,
there and you apologize to your
yeah.
mother.
And what does he say? Like F off or, you MF or whatever.
Right.
And then the father like seems to really physically push him into the stairwell. But then immediately Keith Gordon comes back, puts his hand on the
Yeah.
guy's throat. Like they must have really had an agreement. Like, let's go for it here. Cause
Right.
it's very,
It
very
was very
intense.
convincing
Very
and
convincing. I give credit to Keith Gordon for selling that. In fact, he and Carpenter had this relationship on set where, Keith Gordon very much a character actor and wanting to try out things on
Mhm.
set and different costumes. And it sounded like Carpenter was like totally into it. So
Yes.
he had a lot of freedom to be able to play around with the character. I would imagine maybe some of those suggestions were from him himself. Who knows?
Well,
Um,
yeah, and he treated Christine as a girlfriend.
he
He
did.
treat
He did.
like, when he's touching the I
Yes.
mean, right from the jump when
It
he
was
when
very,
it's a junk
yeah. Like,
a junk car.
do I have the hots for this car? Like, what,
Yeah,
this is a
and
beautiful
that's
car.
he's, like, rubbing the very
Right.
sexually.
Very sexual. And there's one scene in particular where he's in the garage and he steps away because I think Christine shows Arnie her ability to regenerate. So he steps back. Again, a brilliant scene by Carpenter. Arnie steps back, it's over the shoulder, and he just says, "Okay,
Show me.
show me."
Okay. Show me.
I mean, it gives you chills. It's
Yeah,
so good. I mean,
and you know
it's so good.
what's really odd is I forgot he was even in that scene.
What did you say?
I forgot. I what did
Forgot.
I say?
I
4?
for I forgot
Yeah, I think I had my
I
accent
forgot
slide
that it
in.
was a fugazi.
Yeah, but, all he says and then, he says, "Show me," and then the John
Those lights
synthesizer and the
with the
lights come on.
lights. Yes.
And there was little things they did that people
Mhm,
might take for granted, like when they when he goes in, the radio in the car, when he gets the
mhm.
radio to work and it's backlit with this green glow.
Yes.
They didn't have lights in the in the steering or in the column at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was such a forward-thinking kinda thing.
And then just some of those songs, "You keep on knocking, but you can't come
Right,
in." It's just
right.
it was really clever.
And I don't know if you realize this, I don't know if this was in the, just in the commentary, but 2 of the guys, all of them, they had to, like, cut a couple of times while they were smashing the car
Mhm.
because they were so winded and
Yeah.
out of shape, but 2 of them got injured
Mhm.
pretty bad.
I think the
Be
guy that played Moochie.
Is that the heavier kid?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when he was slicing the
He was getting
interior.
glass in his hands because he said he forgot he didn't put any gloves on.
Right.
Because that's one of the first things you see when they walk in. Buddy, he's got those
Puts yeah,
garage gloves
like
on.
he's
He's got the
getting ready to
sledgehammer.
to
Yeah.
rumble.
Speak about talk about the scene, Mooch's death,
Yeah,
where he's being chased.
because again,
That
this is
so
special
good.
this is there's no CGI back then, okay? So, Christine's chasing him, and then he goes down this alley that's
Right.
very narrow.
And then he gets to like a shipping like loading dock, and
Correct.
he's in this little kind of very
And he figures
narrow.
he's safe
Yeah,
because the car,
the
you
car's
know,
like this wide, and the
wide.
thing's like yeah.
And again, I don't know
The
how they did it. They
the
really didn't
engine
reveal
revs.
it,
Yeah,
but all of a sudden the car just
lurches forward
lurches
and
forward
just starts
and
trimming itself down to
it's like
fit into the
Batman, the movie Tim Burton's Batman when all
Mhm.
of a sudden he has to go through and he just drops off the sides and keeps
Right.
going.
Yeah.
But this is more organic. The car's actually crushing itself to get thinner, ultimately crushing him.
Right. And again, they don't show like gratuitous guts
Right,
and blood, and it's just
right.
implied, and that's all you need. That is
And the
all you need.
death the deaths at the gas station, one of the deaths is actually much longer. The other kid that's kinda goofy, he's always
One
laughing.
of the other goons, yeah.
Yeah, one of the other goons, and he actually gets killed by the lift, squishes him, and then Christine drives on top of him, but that was never
Oh,
shown.
oh, okay. I was gonna say because the only one I remember is when Christine drives through the bay of the
Correct,
gas station,
and it
and
kinda
that's the
throws
only
him.
yeah, that was the only little weak with the dummy there,
Yeah,
little bit, but
yeah,
it wasn't that bad. I
and you can
forgave
almost
it.
point to Halloween when
Mhm.
he did that with Michael when a car drove into him that was on
Right.
fire,
Yes.
and you're
Do
like,
you
"That's a dummy."
we mentioned, one of the, Kevin Bacon had been originally
Mhm,
slotted to be, Arnie.
mhm.
Do you know who was up for the role for Buddy?
I must, but I don't remember.
Nick Cage.
Yeah, I think he was for both roles.
Oh,
I think
really?
he read for both roles,
That's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that's
Yes.
interesting. Well, that would make sense. But, William Ostrander is just, like, brilliant,
Yeah.
and you
It
should
was
see him
just an
today.
age he
The dude
literally
still is got the guns, he's hitting the
well,
gym. I mean,
if
good
you look
lord.
on IMDb, on his page,
Yeah.
there's a short from this year, 2023, that
Yes.
says Buddy Repperton Lives.
Uh-huh.
So out there is a 2-minute short of him playing Buddy Repperton again.
Oh, that's interesting because 'cause he's got, like, short kinda white hair and a kinda goatee, whatever, but
Yeah,
he's
and
built like
Keith
a brick
Gordon, you would
shithouse.
not recognize in a million
No, I
years,
think you
but
would.
as
He
soon as
just
he opens his voice, it's the
opens his voice. As
same.
soon as he opens his
Opens
voice
his mouth, I should have
yeah.
said, yeah,
But,
opens
no,
his
I think
voice.
he's still recognizable. He's just thinning on top, but he
Well, he's
looks the
got no
same.
hair, basically.
Okay, that's a little harsh, but,
Well, I think
okay.
I think he went for that look.
Mike gonna get, stalked by Christine after this episode of the Oh Brother
By
podcast
Arnie.
by Arnie, yeah.
Keith Gordon will be over my shoulder.
This
He's a
was,
director now,
he is, yeah, as is John
and a
Stockwell.
successful, yeah, and they're
As
both
well, yeah.
successful.
They're both behind the camera now. This I was looking up the ratings, Metascore 57, Rotten Tomatoes has it at 71% from the critics, 64 from the audience, which I feel like that's very, very low.
It seems like the opposite, if anything.
Very low.
Yeah.
This is a really as you said, it's a bold statement to make, especially when I'm surrounded by Halloween here.
Right.
To say that this is possibly could surpass, Halloween
It
as your favorite
really
Carpenter film.
yes.
It's
I
really
mean,
brilliant.
and I love Escape from New York. I've always been a fan of Kurt
Mhm.
Russell ever since he used to be Disney's poster child, which I don't know if you've seen any of those movies, like The Computer Who Wore Tennis Shoes,
Yeah,
The World's Strongest Man.
you've
Though I
mentioned those
grew
before.
up on that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I put it right up there at the top. It's funny, the car is just so gorgeous, this
Yeah.
car. And there was about 22, 24 cars they got that they had to
Yeah.
piece together, and they ended up
17 that were running.
2 lived, 2
Mhm.
survived.
1 was given away as a contest.
Yeah, and there's one still floating around the horror con circuit, if you will, I
And
think.
one last thing I wanna say about the special effects is and we talked about the regeneration of the car. The
Yeah,
car is trashed. I mean, these guys really went to town, literally had to do it in 3 takes because they got exhausted from swinging um,
sledgehammers and
the
such.
sledgehammers.
Yeah,
So, when he says, "Show me," that's a sign for Christine to start regenerating.
regenerating, yeah.
And the way he shot it, it's real effects. It's not,
Well,
you know
yeah, the guy it was a hydraulics.
right.
They end up shooting it, like, in reverse slow
In
motion or
reverse,
something.
right.
Right,
And
right,
also the camera is upside down
right,
filming it because the look of it makes the things pop better.
right.
So, again, that was not in the first cut of the film.
Oh,
The
really?
regeneration was not in there,
Wow.
and they talked about it, and they said, "We need something special
Okay, but
here."
before it got released. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Before it got
Because
released. Yeah, it
right,
was in the
right.
theater, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
their first cut, it's not in there, so for
That
them to
that is
come up
a
with that
it's just like nothing you've ever seen before.
right,
I put that
the
up against
mirror
almost any of today's effects. It's
yeah,
just, so
we talked
fantastic.
about how Oppenheimer, how they used real effects, not CGI,
Right.
and
Go
you
back
get
to the
paid
basics, the
off. You get
fundamentals.
paid off when you go back to
That's right.
the
It's
basics.
interesting because there's an interview I saw with Carpenter, not necessarily considering this a horror film, but I certainly do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
There
fantastic.
is it takes, over an hour,
Mhm.
and to get the first kill in. Very different from the book.
Well, and again, that's another just like with Halloween, his ability to create suspense,
Tension.
the tension,
Mhm.
it's just, you don't see that anymore. It's the
Right.
slash and, all this stuff
Right.
now that we
Right.
have, get right to the body count,
Yep.
but this is a masterpiece to me. I
It's
absolutely
funny
love it.
because on this side, that's, all of the Friday the 13th movies in a box, and
Oh,
then on
yeah.
this side is all the Halloweens, including your favorite, or
The
favorites, I should say, the 2 zombie films.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So they're
love them.
all there, including the most recent
I
trilogy.
love the shot of Michael's face there, like, it's funny you have that, and then Homer just disrupts the whole thing.
Here's Johnny! Down!
It's just really
Homer, I didn't think was in the
can you get
picture,
rid
but
of
he
Homer for
was.
Halloween
Yeah,
Fest? Like,
and
it's
see,
just
there's the
not.
killing joke I have behind
Oh,
my
yeah,
head.
Killing Joke.
Yeah.
The posters are great. Very timely to have, Carpenter right at the center
Right.
of your display. I love the
And
new
Stephen
Carrie
King
poster.
very prominently.
The Shining poster is wonderful too.
He
Great pickup.
hated that. Stephen King hated that. Can't tell
Great,
you how
great
much he hated
pickups.
that.
Well, I'm not sure what his take is on, Christine, but I love it. So,
Yeah.
and here we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of
And
Christine. So I
and if you haven't seen it,
go
this
see
is
it.
one we expect people have
Buy
seen.
it.
That's why we didn't
This
even think
this
about
is one you should own, which we both do, of course.
right.
I want to mention before we close out here. I figured it was appropriate, but I thought maybe we could turn this into a bit of like a trivia, not a trivia thing, but a little bit of a challenge. So,
Mhm.
um, I'd say maybe the first three people maybe that comment on the video, and like and subscribe and can tell us who this is in this photograph with me. Now, speaking of horror, Mike, this gentleman was in probably one of the most well-known horror films of all time, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Would you consider it horror? Not just like psychological thriller?
Definitely horror.
So let's see
how as the movies go on, they get even more horrific.
Yeah, let's see how good the audience is in spotting who this gentleman is. This is from circa 1998. That was a much younger, little beefier me too, I must say. But
your office was actually used in the film.
In the film
in that
he
film.
Was right at that time, right? So I thought it was appropriate.
They won't know the film. They definitely
won't know the
film.
It's a good film, but
really
I won't give that away. But yeah, it's thought it was appropriate for Halloween Fest. But listen, I'm stoked that we got the review of Christine in, albeit 40 years on. But this is one that, to me, it's for those of you like you that saw it when it first came out. I think it stands the test of time without a doubt.
Definitely. In fact, if anything, it gets better with age.
Yeah. As does the two of us at the Oh Brother Podcast. I can't think of a better way to go out on that note, but here's a cheers to John Carpenter for just a fantastic film. And Christine, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I still like it a lot, Michael. It's just
absolutely,
insane.
We still love you. Now we're going to get stalked by, Michael Myers.
Christine.
See, now I have the Christine red tonight, whereas you have
I'm donning black.
You're donning the Arnie black when he got into his badass phase.
Dark
all right, that's gonna do it for another episode of the Oh Brother Podcast. Been your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith, and we will see you next time.
Boo, everybody.